Hello, this is my review PowerPoint on Chapter 9 from Difficult Conversations. It's titled Listen from the Inside Out. Now, the example that the chapter first picks is a conversation between a woman named Greta and her mother, who was just recently diagnosed with diabetes. And Greta is expressing her frustration in her mother's apparent lack of adherence to the new dietary restrictions and medication regimen that she needs in order to safely navigate her diabetes. So Greta has a constant battle with her mother to get her to take her medications on time, follow her medication regimen, exercise a little more, and she's becoming increasingly more frustrated as her mother continues to respond with that it is too difficult for her and that Greta doesn't understand what she's going through, and eventually her mother just shuts down and ends the conversation. So Greta continues to try and be more forceful with it, to tell her, to try and emphasize that it's that important for her mom to do that, until she tries a listening approach to it, because listening is really going to transform her conversation with her mother. So she again starts the conversation, but she starts at this time with acknowledging that her mother doesn't like talking about it. And as she does so, she opens the door to more conversation between her and her mom and allows her mom to express why she doesn't like to. Eventually, through her probing questions and open door questions, her mother opens up and explains how it's the fact that she doesn't feel like she has support, that she used to lean heavily on her deceased husband who's no longer there to help her, and that she feels that because her mother had died of diabetes, that she was going to be doing the same thing to Greta if she followed the same regimen, because she didn't fully understand it. So by using these probing and not really probing, but open door questions, she helped her mother understand that it is important and that she's going to assist her through this process rather than her being all on her own. So ultimately, she achieved the same goal, but she did it in a way that was more effective, because by just being assertive with her mother was never going to be effective at all. So really, listening is the part that transformed that conversation. And by asking learning questions, she was able to open that door. So in order to do that, we need to take the stance of curiosity. And there's three components of that. But really what we're doing with this stance of curiosity is we're asking questions that are encouraging conversation between you and the other person. You're opening the door to a dialogue that's going to allow them to express how they really feel, because they may not communicate the same way that we do. And that's ultimately why we're in these difficult conversations, because we don't always communicate the same way. So really we're going to use three things in order to have a stance of curiosity. Those three things are inquiry, paraphrasing, and acknowledgement. And under inquiry, we're truly trying to listen and ask these open-ended questions in order to provoke the person to tell us what they really want to say. But we have to listen in order to understand what they're saying. So what we can't do, however, is we can't allow for questions that are presented in a way that is could be misunderstood, or we could, if we make a statement disguised as a question, such as the book uses an example when the kids in the car classic and they say, "Are we there yet?" They're not really, they know we're not there yet. They're in the middle of the desert and they're trying to go to the ocean. So they know they're not there. But what they're really trying to say is, I'm tired, I'm anxious, I don't want to be in this car anymore, I wish we were there already. And because they didn't say that, because they said, "Are we there yet?" their parents are going to answer with a similarly frustrated answer, because obviously they're not there yet. Where if they would have said, Mom, Dad, I'm really anxious in the car, I wish we were there already, the parents might have a better answer, help them get through the situation, pull over to a rest stop, play a game. Simply by posing it as a question does not make it a good statement. So when we ask these questions, we need to really check ourselves and make sure that we're asking them in a way that is conversation provoking and not anger provoking. Really, the next step with this is to paraphrase what the person is saying to us. So really what we're doing is we're trying to gain clarity, because it serves two purposes. By paraphrasing, you're listening to what they say, and then we're going to repeat it back to them, which in paramilitary organizations or where I work in the fire department, we call that closed-end communication, where you're going to receive an order and you're going to repeat it back. And by doing that, you are showing the person who gave you the order that you understood it and that you're going to carry it out. Because if you repeat it back and it's incorrect, it gives that person the ability to say, oh, no, I didn't mean it that way, or no, I need you to do this instead. So that way we know that we're heard and understood. When it comes to these difficult conversations, the same is true, because you're trying to gain clarity that you understand what they're saying, that you are listening to them, and that they are being heard, because ultimately you're trying to encourage them and to bring them down, to de-escalate the situation if it is escalated, to ensure that they feel confident in your communication skills, that you are actually listening. So by showing them you're listening through paraphrasing, you are building rapport in that situation. You're gaining their trust and you're opening the dialogue to a conversation rather than simply a confrontation, we'll say. And by doing so, you're also acknowledging them. You're acknowledging that they're heard. You're acknowledging that they have a valid point, or that you understand their point. But the main reason for acknowledgement in this case is you are not acknowledging that you're agreeing. Because what you're doing is you're answering their question that they're not saying. You're saying, yes, I hear you. Yes, I understand you. I hear your problem, let's just say, between a subordinate and a supervisor. Okay, yes, you don't like your transfer, that you're going to be transferred out even though you've been in this department for 10 years and you thought you had tenure and so you shouldn't be getting moved, and you're frustrated because it's not normally normal practice, so you feel you've been slighted. By acknowledging their complaint or their dilemma, you are answering their question as to, yes, I see you have a dilemma. I understand that is a pretty crummy situation and that, you feel slighted. But by doing that, you're not agreeing that they're correct or that they're right or that they deserve something out of their complaint. What you're doing is simply showing them that you are an active listener in the situation and you're bringing the conversation to the next step, which in this case would be empathy. By acknowledging them, that you have heard them and that you understand that they have a point, your next step is to use empathy and use their perspective to see the situation. It's easy for everyone to look at a situation, draw our own conclusion, and say, okay, this is what the answer is, because that's only based on our conclusion. But really, if we sit down and we look through their eyes and their perspective and see what's going on, we are able to make better decisions if that's what the conversation warrants. We're able to communicate more effectively because we can see why they feel the way that they do, and maybe we can come up with a better solution because of that. Empathy is what is going to make you a good leader and a better communicator, because you're able to solve problems much more efficiently and effectively. Because we all think of the golden rule as treat others how you would want to be treated. But unfortunately, that's not really the golden rule. The golden rule is actually treat others how they want to be treated. Because I may want to be treated one way, but that doesn't mean you want to be treated the same way. So you need to have empathy. You need to look through their eyes and their position and understand what it is they feel and why. So in conclusion, we're going to really listen, because honestly, listening is the key to resolving difficult conversation. If we don't listen, then all we're going to do is talk at someone, and they're just going to talk back at you. You will never reach a conclusion, or at least an effective conclusion, if neither party listens. If at least one party is listening, they can direct the conversation to a conclusion. If both parties are listening, the conclusion will come much faster and much more effectively for both parties. So if we can lead by example in any conversation that we're in, and we can listen and take that lead, acknowledge that they've been heard by paraphrasing what they've said and really asking inquiring questions to expand this conversation, we're going to learn things that we didn't expect to learn. It could change our perspective on the whole situation, or it can at least solidify our previous conclusions on our own and gives us a better stance to conclude the conversation effectively. Because sometimes the person may be in the wrong, let's just say, or incorrect, but that doesn't mean that their opinion isn't warranted or valid. So that's our job, to listen and to use our empathy to look through their eyes in the situation and then make decisions that are for the good of both parties in a way that they will understand. And that's how we solve difficult conversations.